If you were constructing a building and you found that there were errors, inconsistencies, and other sort of mistakes in the foundation that thereby weakened that foundation, would you just keep building more stories and more floors on top of that weak foundation? Or would you halt the construction and then address those errors and address those inconsistencies? So obviously most people would say, well, we would stop building because we don't want to, build this thing and have it fall over. We don't want to waste our time and energy. We don't want to endanger the lives of others. We don't want to lose money, etc. And it's funny that most people would say that, and it's a common response, yet when it comes to our worldviews, our paradigms, or our assumptions about the world, or our health philosophy, we do the exact opposite. We might start off with false assumptions and incorrect axioms, but we just keep building on top of it and building on top of it and adding more and adding more and adding more until we reach this place where all of a sudden we have this really weird lean going on. We have all these inconsistencies, all these things that are really weakening that building. It's really hard to keep that building up and keep that building afloat. But if we're going to give that building a strong foundation, then it can thereby stay upright pretty easy and effortlessly. In much in the same way, we can quote Albert Einstein, and he said that basically we can't solve problems from the same level of consciousness that created them. Going further, we can look at the definition of insanity, which is basically doing the same thing over and over and over again, but expecting different results. Which again, most people will say, oh yeah, totally. Makes so much sense. Why don't people do that? Well, we should ask ourselves, how often do we think the same thoughts? Do we have the same beliefs and self-images about ourselves? And then expect different results? How much do we keep thinking the same thing and thinking the same worldviews and the same paradigms, but also expecting different results? For most of us, that's going to be pretty common. So what does that say about the overall state and the overall level of consciousness that we find ourselves in presently? Now again, that's more of a rhetorical question, more of food for thought for a later date, not really what we're going to talk about in this video. So getting back to the point, getting to the context of health, most holistic health paradigms or strategies or techniques or practitioners or whatever have this foundational assumption about the energetic nature of reality. People will reference, pseudoscience or pseudo-New Age philosophies or quantum physics or string theory or all of these different permutations and interpretations of these theories to then support this, quote, energetic model of reality. Likewise, people will also reference, quote, ancient philosophies, whether that's Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, Tibetan medicine, Indian medicine, African medicine, Egyptian medicine, list just goes on. Because both of these worlds have kind of as their assumption basically the energetic nature of this, quote, physical world and our, quote unquote, physical body. So fast forward to present times in our new agey sort of holistic alternative health paradigms or philosophies, people have this same assumption. Oh, it's about energy, it's the energetic nature of the body, the chakras, the meridians, the nadis, the marma points, the acupressure points, the acupuncture points, reflexology points, on and on and on. So this is the foundational assumption. Yet people have this as their assumption, but then tend to go off in all of these weird directions. Tend to go off and build all sorts of weird things on top of this existing foundation without really addressing that foundation, without really understanding the real nature of what that is. So in a simple way, we might be able to understand this energetic phenomena as kind of like a turbine. So if you can imagine a turbine, it's a big fan. And for most humans, most of the time, it's spinning kind of slowly. It's just sort of going around and gradually making its way through. But because we haven't really developed a skill or developed a sensitivity, that turbine is sort of just doing its own thing and operating sort of unconsciously and autonomously. And again, that imagery of the turbine could be kind of like the energetic flow in the body. And unless we can actually see the turbine, perceive the turbine, measure the turbine, and see what it's actually doing, and seeing what our inputs, our how and why they're actually affecting it, then our methodologies aren't really going to be that effective. And this is the crux and where a lot of things go wrong, is that people, have this assumption, they have this sort of turbine imagery, but they have no real methodology to measure it, to perceive it directly in a real physical, visceral, tangible sense. And I guess my necklace just popped out of my shirt. So they sort of build off this weak foundation, keep going, and then wonder why things just don't feel right. So let's take a couple of examples to really understand what we mean and really where we're going with this point and sort of with this point of view. So in a general sense, we can start to see and understand that maybe we've been given false surrogates for real felt internal experiences. Much in the same way as thinking that external validation through status or wealth or popularity or approval or possessions really represent and can adequately replace internal development. For example, people most of the time would rather spend more time manicuring their lawn or working on their house or washing their car or working on their physical appearance than they would actually reflecting on their own mind. Then they would actually sitting down and being quiet with themselves for long periods of time. There was actually a great mathematician and philosopher who said all of man's problems relate to the inability to be able to sit in a closed room by yourself for long periods of time. I think that was Blaise Pascal who said that. And that's sort of a rough summation of that quote, but you hopefully understand the general point that we're talking about. And at this point, a lot of people probably jump to the conclusion and assume that I'm sort of on this Luddite, communist, hippie sort of trip where I'm saying, oh, physical external is bad and we should not do it. It's not really what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that we should understand that, yeah, we live in a physical world and we are enmeshed and embedded and surrounded by these things. And we should realize that maybe we've been programmed, maybe we've been trained to be blinded and bamboozled by these things and think that they can really replace and represent true internal development. Meaning people think, oh, I've achieved this, and people say this about me and think this about me, and I have this sort of car and this sort of house and these sort of clothes. So that must mean that I'm this sort of person. And then oftentimes that just sort of stagnates the real will or the real drive and desire for true internal development, or that true felt experience. And if you think that's weird or sort of conspiracy theory-esque or out there at all, I can assure you it's quite the opposite. It's very literal, it's very well established, it's very true, and that is specifically how and why our society and our culture was engineered and created to be the way that it is. And if you're offended by that and you think that sounds weird, then probably haven't done much time or energy or spent much research on actually looking at the history of our culture. Because all it takes is watching a simple documentary called The Century of the Self, or reading the works of Edward Bernays. Because if you look at either of those things, everything I'm saying is absolutely crystal clear and wide out in the open. No conspiracy weirdness, no nothing. Pretty much clear as day, clear as crystal, pretty straightforward. So basically, from these examples, we can see how perhaps we've bought false surrogates for the real felt experiences. Or perhaps we each maybe have these inherent psychological drives and psychological forces and archetypes that want expression, that want acknowledgement, that crave and desire awareness and attention. But instead, we've been sort of sold this modern culture and paradigm which has taken this internal thing and sort of pulled it outside of ourselves, so we crave it always outside. Because of course we have this thing inside of us that wants to be met, but instead of actually meeting it, we're just thinking that this external thing or this symbolic thing can actually literally, tangibly, viscerally replace the real internal thing, which obviously it can't, it never does, and it never will, which is why it really sets up a real cycle of craving or cycle of dissatisfaction. Much in the same way that fast food fills time and space, but really lacks nourishment and substance, and typically only creates more hunger and more craving, and really leaves us just more depleted. Thus creating an endless cycle of craving, an endless cycle of not enough, and then obviously job security and a predictable revenue stream for businesses, corporations, organizations, cults, religions, spiritual organizations, whatever. So we might ask ourselves at this point, how does this principle we're talking about relate to various health paradigms or new agey or spiritual paradigms or religious paradigms of all shapes and sizes? And might the same principles be at play in those areas as well? And obviously those are things for you to think about. It's obviously something that I'm not going to tell you because it's up to you to come to your own conclusions. And maybe while we're thinking about that, we might eventually realize that perhaps it's more about simplicity. Perhaps it's more about unlearning rather than complexity, accumulation, and climbing this imaginary, illusory ladder. Maybe it's more about examining and re-examining our pre-existing assumptions, axioms about the world, about reality, about ourselves, and then upgrading them to something that is more functional, more harmonious, more in alignment with what feels right, rather than just ignoring it and continually just building more and more on top of it. And maybe going back to our original metaphor about energy, and the nature of energy, and that whole turbine thing, maybe it's really about developing a skill set to be able to adequately and accurately tune into the flow of energy in our bodies, and thus be able to use that energy more efficiently and effectively. Maybe it's about being able to see the turbine, understand what that turbine symbolizes and illustrates in our body, and then be able to see the flow of that, and be able to kickstart that flow every single day, all the time, keeping it going, because it's going to speed up, and then life's going to happen, and it's going to slow down a little bit, and then we're going to speed it up more, it's going to slow down a little bit, and speed it up more, it's going to slow down a little bit. But it's really, again, developing the awareness, the attention, the intention, and the skill set to actually be able to measure and see what's actually happening, and how what we're doing is actually affecting that. Because again, that turbine imagery is illustrating energy flow in our bodies and in our lives, and various other principles and forces, which I'm not really going to go into in this video, but things that you can ideally and hopefully figure out through your own experience. And at this point, it might seem kind of confusing. It might be like, oh, that's hard work. Can't you just tell me A, B, C, D and exactly what to do and follow this method and this rule and this skill set? And really, it's not necessarily that simple, because we've just spent the last 10 minutes talking about how and why we are being sold false surrogates for real felt internal experiences. So it's really about us getting to a place to turn our energy and attention more inwards, and thereby allowing ourselves to open up a greater channel of wisdom, insight, and transformation in a way that is right for our unique personality, in a way that allows us to express and embody our true self, our authentic self, and really allow us to express our passion and inspiration and excitement in our unique way, in our unique form to the world, in a way that is right for us. So that's pretty much all I can say on that note, and it looks like that's the end of my outline, which must mean it's the end of the video. So hopefully this video has been helpful. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and I thank you for watching it this far and for watching all the other videos. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and it's spawned some food for thought, and I will talk to you soon.